Hey guys, Devin here. Hey guys, let's see what I did that in a second. I'm eating a steak and I'm going to react to Mikhalia Peterson showing her banned TED Talk. This is good stuff for anyone who has insomnia, autoimmune issues. I had really horrible insomnia for 19 years. Just absolutely horrible. Built this whole channel around fixing people's insomnia. Without further ado, let's begin reacting to this, see what we can learn from Mikhalia Peterson.
Hey guys, as you may know, I did a TEDx talk in the summer about my experience with the Lion diet, the all meat diet that put my autoimmune disorder that caused crippling.
I am also eating exclusively meat right now. Not as strictly as Miss Michaela, but very strictly. Eat like pretty much exclusively meat. Makes me feel amazing.
Arthritis and gave me 2 joint replacements into remission. I followed TEDx's guidelines very carefully as I'm aware my experience with diet is anecdotal. I finished the talk asking the medical system to look into the diet further. We spent the last 4 months going back and forth with TEDx because they won't post the talk. I was the only talk from that TEDx conference that they refused to post. They said my talk went against their community guidelines, but couldn't name exactly what it went against. And it didn't. Like I said, I was really careful. Since then, Harvard has put out a study on the carnivore diet that I've linked below, showing other people who have also had success putting their diseases into remission. This is something that should be taken seriously and looked into. TEDx is supposed to be a place for new ideas and novel thinking and anecdotal reports. They have tons of vegan talks claiming veganism cures diseases, but my story didn't make it through because it violated community guidelines they can't name. So I decided to put it up here. Enjoy.
Hi, my name is Mikhalia Peterson, and I'm here to talk about how I put my idiopathic autoimmune disorder and mood disorder and chronic fatigue into remission with an extreme elimination diet of only eating meat. But I will start at the beginning. When I was 2, I started walking with my feet out like a duck. And by the time I was in grade 2, I was walking downstairs 1 foot at a time, complaining that my shoes were too small. And I was diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, active in 37 joints. I was put on methotrexate and naproxen to get my symptoms under control and had cortisone injected into 17 of my joints in grade 2. I was sitting on a chair in class because I couldn't sit on the carpet because I couldn't sit on my knees or cross my legs.
But it's crazy they did all that without ever doing a dietary intervention first.
I was using this really ugly fat pencil because I couldn't hold a pencil because I couldn't close my hand. When I was in grade 4, I was put on Enbrel, a biologic immune suppressant, and I started injecting myself with Enbrel and methotrexate twice a week, and I was put into a medically induced remission, and I went on all the sports teams I could go on. I went from being nearly wheelchair bound to playing sports. At the same time, my mental health declined dramatically, and I started experiencing OCD symptoms and suicidal thoughts. And I was put on SSRIs and diagnosed with major depressive disorder, potentially bipolar type 2 with hypomania. When I was in grade 8, I started experiencing the sensations of mosquitoes biting my whole body and chronic fatigue. And by chronic fatigue, I mean I couldn't wake up and I was falling asleep in class. By the time I was in grade 11, my arthritis had gotten bad enough that it had destroyed
I'm just taking some betadine. Betadine is really awesome for stomach acid.
all the cartilage in my right hip. And I stopped being able to sleep because of the pain and was put on OxyContin. And when I was 17, I had my hip replaced. While I was healing from my hip replacement, my body destroyed all the cartilage in my left ankle, and I ended up walking on basically broken bones. So I had my ankle replaced, so that was 17. I went off to university, and my mental health deteriorated further.
Me too.
They tried to stabilize.
When I went to college, that was where I had a whole month I didn't sleep because they spray all the food in soy.
Me with Wellbutrin, and I ended up having a grand mal seizure at the university library. They tried to stabilize me with an SNRI, and I was so angry I felt like I could claw my skin off. About a year and a half into university, this gets better, I swear. about a year and a half, about a year and a half into university, I was so fatigued that I missed my final exams, and I dropped out and went home. When I got home, I started experiencing a rash on my back and on my bum and then on my face. And when I got to my face, I thought, okay, arthritis is one thing, idiopathic hypersomnia or chronic fatigue is one thing, chronic depression is one thing, but like a rash on my face, I cannot handle that. And I started researching. December 2014, the rash stopped healing. And I went to dermatologist after dermatologist, and they said, you know, stop doing this, you're anxious. And I was like, okay, that's not super helpful. So I figured if I don't figure out what's wrong with me, I'm going to die because my body was destroying its tissues. At that point, I was on Tylenol 3 to take at night because the shoulder pain was so bad from the arthritis that wasn't kept in check that I couldn't sleep. I was taking 40 milligrams of Adderall just to wake up in the morning because of the idiopathic hypersomnia. I was taking Dapsone, which is an antibiotic used to treat leprosy so that my skin would heal. I was taking 40 milligrams of escitalopram for the depression. I
had like rashes all over my groin for like months and months and months on end, which are really not fun.
An inhaler because if I got a cold, it would turn into bronchitis, that would turn into pneumonia, and I'd end up in the hospital because of the immune suppressants.
I never would have known about this until it was at a much more advanced stage. My provider.
I was taking a prescription strength antihistamine because I was so allergic to trees and grass that I was verging on anaphylaxis in the spring. Anyway, there were more.
Oh, it's interesting. They're targeting people who are watching this video.
So I started researching and I came across this rash eventually called dermatitis herpetiformis, which is the skin manifestation of celiac disease, which is an autoimmune disorder that can be triggered by gluten. And I thought, holy shit, is it celiac disease the whole time? So I cut out gluten. I went off of my immune suppressants, which weren't really working anyway, given the fact I'd lost a hip and an ankle. And I started monitoring my symptoms really closely to look for flare-ups. In September 2015, I reduced my diet further because cutting out gluten wasn't enough. And I thought, if I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life, researching, trying to figure out what's wrong with me, I might as well rule out diet. So I went down to meat and greens and certain root vegetables that I didn't really like carrots, sweet potatoes, parsnips. I cut out all the foods that I thought could be potentially causing inflammation. And that month, my skin healed for the first time in a number of years. I lost 3 pant sizes of bloating I didn't know I had. 2 months into that,
The reduction in bloating on Carnivore is huge.
my fatigue went away for the first time since grade 8, and I stopped taking Adderall. 3 months into that diet, my depression went away for the first time in my entire life. And I went from living in hell to being in heaven, a hell that I didn't know I'd been living in. And I thought, okay, well, I'm not taking any drugs ever again. And I stopped taking my SSRI over a 2-week period without realizing, because nobody told me, that SSRI withdrawal exists. And
my brother experienced that when he got prescribed SSRIs for sleep.
For the next 2 years, I had the most horrific experiences of my entire life, and that is saying something. I reintroduced soy a couple of weeks after I went off of SSRIs, and I had a full-blown autoimmune response. And it started with my digestion was upset, my entire body got itchy. The next day, my depression was back worse than I'd ever experienced, and I got into the shower and thought, how could I be so arrogant as to think I could control this disease with diet? And I cried. 4
I've thought that so many times too.
days later, I had
Not anymore though, it's all fixed.
mouth ulcers, my arthritis was back, my rash was back, and I got my brother to drive me home from my parents because I didn't think I could drive. And I got out of the car and I went to my apartment, I turned around, and my brother's head looked like that. For about 2 seconds, he looked at me and he went off, and then it was my brother again. And I thought, oh my God, I just stopped taking all my medication and now I'm insane. So for the next year, I went in and out of what I now know was SSRI withdrawal mixed with an autoimmune disorder and food sensitivities, and I had 24-day-long reactions each time I tried to reintroduce a food. About a year after that, I figured maybe I'll just stop reintroducing foods and not experience this. And at that time, I got pregnant, which I didn't even know I would be able to do.
I went through the same thing reintroducing foods when I came off of carnivore, and I think I figured out how to do food reintroduction. It has to do with rebuilding the gut, detox, and a lot of sensitivity to the human body. But I have been through that pain of reintroduction. I am on the other side of it. And while I still eat a very, very, very limited selection of foods, I can eat foods without having month-long autoimmune attacks. I have had multiple week-long autoimmune attacks before, so involving gallbladder attacks and feeling like I was like curled on the floor, needed to go to the hospital for like days at a time, and puking and vomiting and sweating and horrible, horrible stuff. I'll make a video about it, but reintroduction is possible. So, Mikhaila, if you see this, hit me up. I'd love to talk to you about it. It'd just be interesting to know what you think about my theories.
Given all the medications I'd been on. I went down to Meat and Greens to try and get my symptoms under control. And a year after that, I was breastfeeding, getting out of bed, my wrist buckled. I thought, okay, I have to do something because I'm worried I'm going to drop my baby. The arthritis was back. I was itchy everywhere. And I was like, how is this possible? If I'd experienced remission, why isn't that diet working anymore? And I cut everything out except for beef. And 2 weeks after doing that, thinking I'm nuts and hopefully I don't get vitamin deficiencies.
I thought that too. When I first went on carnivore to fix my insomnia. Didn't happen. But she made the Facebook group that my wife and I met in called The Meeting Place, which is just the funniest thing ever. Shout out to the carnivore queen, Mikhalia Peterson.
The itch went away and my joints started to feel better. 4 weeks after that, so 6 weeks after an all-beef diet, the depression lifted and I stopped crying in the morning. And 5 months after that, the anxiety lifted and I was back in what I felt was heaven compared to how I'd been living. So that's all beef, all lamb, salt, and water. Now, I've been talking about this diet to spread awareness and in hopes that the medical community can take something like this seriously. My mom went on the diet and her osteoarthritis went away. My dad went on the diet and he lost 70 pounds. His GERDs went away. He had psoriasis. That went away. I've talked to thousands of people with autoimmune disorders who've done similar things and seen similar results. So, that is me now. That is my kid. I'm a CEO. I'm a podcaster. I try to share my experience to get people to see what this kind of diet does for me. I call it the lion diet because it's not cool to be this restricted, and it's not cool to have an autoimmune disorder and people who are sick feel isolated and miserable.
Facts.
So I'm trying to make it cool, but what would be really cool would be if the medical community could take this seriously and do some case studies.
Amen to that, carnivore queen. So, what I just want to add to this is I've done carnivore for years. It solved nearly all my health problems. Didn't solve all of them. It's not the complete solution, but for me, it's been a lot of the solution. At least showed me the way to the solution. I believe that everyone should eat according to their metabolic type, which is probably dictated by your mitochondrial RNA. But for me, cheese, meat, carnivore, for the most part, is the way. Sometimes carbs, sometimes raw milk, fruit, herbs, other things, still use caffeine, various things. But I'm always refining, I'm always honing in on what exactly works. I use green tea. I find green tea to be absolutely amazing. Very, 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 very helpful, though I reacted horribly to it in the beginning. But ultimately, green tea has led to a reduction of my reactions to foods. Like just consuming large amounts of green tea makes me way less reactive, I think, because of its detox properties. Because detoxing heavy metals reduces your propensity to look up all this stuff. This is all just stuff you can look up. Reduces your propensity to react to foods, to have autoimmune reactions. So I think a lot of the reason why we have such an uptick in autoimmune disorders and in secondary disorders related to autoimmune disorders is because you all have so much mercury, lead, heavy metals, plastics, all this stuff in us that I don't know if I'm going to do another one of these reaction videos while eating because like the chewing, it's just like they're popular though. They're popular, so I wanted to try the trend, but I don't know. Maybe I just have to get better at it, get better at the timing. But basically, where was I? Green tea detox, green tea detox autoimmunity. Hmm. Well, just lost my train of thought, guys. Anyway, tune in tomorrow for another reaction video to something wonderful and relevant.